the rest of the evening. I'm really pleased to be able to kind of join a number of other community leaders to talk about some of these issues. And I'm going to, in just a moment, sort of introduce each of them individually to share a few minutes of their initial reactions to this. And then we're going to move into a sort of a facilitated Q&A period where I'll pose some questions to them to explore these ideas in a little more detail. And finally, we're going to open things up to the audience through that Slido mechanism that we talked about before. And again, a reminder that you want to go on your mobile phone to your browser and open up slido.com. You're going to enter the event code 71953, and you'll be able to pose questions and help rank and prioritize the questions that do come forward at that time. So you're welcome to log on to there now, start putting some of those questions in. But in the meantime, I'm going to move along to our panelists. And I'd like to first introduce, to share some thoughts and some words with us tonight, the Member of Parliament for Pitt Meadows Maple Ridge, Mark Dalton. Mark?
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you to the city for really organizing this, spearheading this. And Brock, a very fascinating presentation that you've shown right here. I hope you don't mind. I took a few pictures of the slides, but actually it's quite inspirational. And as far as communicating opportunities that we have as far as society, I know a lot of people are having a tough time, and you've seen that with the number of businesses that are the falling and the unemployment rates. So and also going into Christmas and just in general how people are feeling. So I just think that just talking about some of the positive trends, as far as savings, as far as opportunity, I think that's great. Just a few. We don't have much time right here, so I just want to say a few things, and that is I've been the MP for the past year. Prior to that, I was MLA for about 2 terms for 8 years of school. I was a teacher, have been a teacher for many years in the school district. And one of my staffers asked me, I don't know, maybe a month ago, what is our number one priority? And honestly, my number one priority, and I've told my staff that, it says it really is serving the community, serving individuals. No matter where they're at or what the issue is, how can we bring things forward? May not always be in our jurisdiction, might be, it might be under municipality or under the province, but nevertheless, kind of working alongside and advancing it. I give you just one little example. About maybe 3 weeks ago, there was 3-4 weeks ago, a lady that's been in our hospice, dying of cancer, and she's wanted to get her daughter to be a co-signer so she could transfer funds. And the bank manager said, well, you've got to come into the branch to sign this form. And she said, I can't walk. She's dying right there. So it was very challenging. She phoned us, and I phoned the manager. He said the same thing. Talked to other banks. They made opportunities for. They would make opportunities for people to sign. So end up dealing with their head office, and finally, after we're able to get that changed, and hopefully the policy changed. So it's just things like that, even though it might not be specifically under the federal government, that to assist people. And so that's what I see my role is, just serving in small capacities, in larger, in coordination with the community. Another example, the Service Canada, which is important for previously CERB, EI, guaranteed income support, old age supplement. It's been closed for quite a few months, and my office has been open the entire time. We looked at so I asked a question to the minister responsible in the parliament. I am in opposition, but even in opposition, you can still have some influence by bringing issues up. And so that's how I see my role, bringing things up. And so ask the question, puts a little pressure on it. The next day it was open. So it's things like this, hearing. I appreciate, I was looking at the names of the different participants here today. About half of you I know, and I thank you for, just looking at your names, for the role that you have played within the community, and looking forward to working together with you also. I've got just a couple of slides here. Let's you did touch on them briefly, Brock. Can we put one up there, Sean Mark? Here we go. Maybe not. Anyways, if we can't see it, then, oh, here we go. So just in general, these are some of the programs that are available. The Canada Recovery Benefit. That's you're going to be able to, if you want to check out my website later on, you can see that information tomorrow. Canada's Recovery Sickness Benefit, that if someone is if they're unable to work for at least 50% of the week, because they've contracted COVID, there's some benefit there. The Canada Recovery Caregiver Benefit, if you need to be able to take care of children or someone else in your home, there's that benefit. Let's turn to here's some programs to assist businesses. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, that has been changed. It covers up to 65% of an employee's wages for qualifying eligible employers. The Canada Emergency Business Account, this has been changed also. It provides interest-free, partially forgivable loans up to $60,000 for small businesses and for non-for-profits. And also we have the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy, which provides a direct and easy-to-access rent and mortgage subsidy up to 65%. And finally, lockdown support for qualifying organizations that have been significantly restricted by a mandatory public health order. I got a call a couple days ago from one of the business here. He's having to close down. This is something he might be able to avail himself. So, if there are questions on this, please contact my office. I'm here to walk alongside with you, and thank you for this opportunity to share a few words. There's some contact information.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. That was great. And I'm sure the contact information and the willingness to engage around these things is very much appreciated. I'd like to move along to the next member of our panel, and this is the member of the Legislative Assembly for Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, and British Columbia's Minister of Citizen Services, the Honorable Lisa Bear. Lisa?
Great. Thank you so much, Brock. I do want to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking today on the territories of the Katzie and the Kwantlen First Nations. And I really want to start by saying thank you to everyone who's joining us online today. It's great that we are able to come together. We've had such a fantastic time participating on this forum, Bob and myself, over the past few years. And so the ability to take it online and to thank the city for organizing that so we can have this important discussion. Because we absolutely all share a love for our city, for our community, for our province, and for Canada. And so to be able to have these important discussions together is a great opportunity. We're going to get questions from yourself, the moderator, and from the public, and that's really going to form a lot of tonight's discussion and where that information is really going to come out. But I do want to say that it's an honor and thank you to be re-elected. Bob and I were both just recently re-elected as your MLA for Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, and I was so pleased to be able to serve over the past 3.5 years as the Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture, and now in the role as the Minister for Citizen Services. Over these past 10 months, we know how extremely challenging it has been for every single British Columbian. But really, I, from the bottom of my heart, want to say how proud all of you should be in how we've handled this pandemic together. It truly is because of every single one of yourselves and every single business who is put in the hard work and made the sacrifices, who've followed Dr. Henry's recommendations and taken them to heart. It's gotten us to where we are today. And I know we are, deep in the wave of the second wave, but we were able, to absolutely flatten the curve in the spring, which got us through to this point in a manageable way. We've been able to take the growth we've had in the second wave and to bend that curve again. Absolutely, we'd like to see it lower, but we are bending it, and it's due to everyone on making those efforts and making those sacrifices. And we know that businesses, have been particularly hard hit by the pandemic. And it's absolutely important that we continue to support business and economic development all across the province. We have a number of supports in place, some of which we'll be able to talk about, I'm sure, tonight, but really it's about the survival of small and medium-sized businesses. That's critical to communities like ours, and that economic development is critical to the future of our province. So we need to make sure, and we have here at the province, that we're putting in supports for businesses and making that central to BC's recovery plan, and making sure that we help businesses get through the pandemic to ensure that they're around to be part of a strong recovery, and making sure we're putting the supports in place that we are able to support that economic development moving forward as well. And so with that, I think I'll leave it there because I'm really looking forward to the discussion. So thank you, Brock, for the time.
Thank you, Minister. Appreciate the excellent comments. They're very informative. It's nice to hear about some of the things that you're thinking about and working on an ongoing basis. I'd now like to turn to the other member of the Legislative Assembly that we have with us today, the member for Maple Ridge Mission, Bob Deeth.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brock. And I too would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you virtually, but physically on the unceded territory of the Katzie and Kwantlen First Nations, and wanted to thank them for the ability to make this presentation on that land. I also wanted to, Brock, I really enjoyed your presentation. Very interesting. The idea of the K recovery. I think that's a really interesting theory, and I see some merit in that, because we are definitely seeing some businesses, for example, taking off. Like I think Jeff Bezos is going to be the first trillionaire, right? And that scares me. But anyway, but then there's some businesses that are going to have a real tough time, like you said, in tourism. I also wanted to thank the city for organizing this. I know it's tough time, but putting in that extra effort to bring us all together. I saw the picture at the beginning of those comfy chairs we sat in last year, and I was feeling like a little bit down, but I was also feeling good, because I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe next year we will be sitting in those chairs together, and that's something to look forward to. And I think if we stay on this path, a good path moving forward, we'll get there together. And I don't want to just reiterate what Minister Bear had said, but I'd like to talk a couple of things about the community. And I know, Brock, you picked up on a few things just about what the crisis has done, and it's really interesting to see, for example, how caring and resilient the community can be, for example. It's just amazing to see how the community has pulled together, and that's really important. And also to see how the different levels of government have worked together so well, and even across party lines as well. So I think that's really important. And I could say that, for example, an example of that was the Salvation Army and the province of BC, Fraser Health, and the city all worked together to build some temporary capacity on Lougheed Highway, those COVID pods, so that we could keep people who are homeless safe, but also deal with that very important distancing. And that was something that we did together. And I think that that in itself, coming out of the pandemic, will really help us move forward in Maple Ridge together. And I think that sort of initiative is really important to build that kind of working together. Another thing is, you talked about, was innovation. And I don't know if everyone remembers, but Quinn Callender, who's a 13-year-old Maple Ridge Boy Scout, he made the Forbes 8 under 18. And what happened is his mother saw a Facebook post from a BC nurse that they needed ear guards to make masks. And so what Quinn did with his dad, he actually used his 3D printer to print these little clips, and he's done thousands of them. And so he actually got noticed. And so that type of really interesting entrepreneurial spirit from a 13-year-old can teach us all a lesson. And if you take it to the other side, the Ridge Meadow Senior Society, for example, they were out, even though they couldn't get together, they would do these loudspeakers outside and streamers and have little dance parties on their balconies to bring people together. And so even though we were in isolation, they were able to sort of do things together, which I thought was really great. And also there was a mobile music therapy program that that Music Heals did in the community. So the point is that yes, things were tough, but our community pulled together. They were not only compassionate, but they were also innovative. And I thought that was really, really amazing. And that's something we can all learn from. And of course, just it's my public service announcement type thing. You know, I know that Dr. Henry and Adrian Dix, minister, have announced the restrictions have been extended until January 8th. We are trying to flatten that curve. And I think I know it's tough for everybody, but I think that's so important. And it's not just important for the health and safety, like Brock said, it's actually also important for our businesses, because if we can't flatten the curve and we can't keep people safe, then people can't go out and use our local businesses. So it's really, really important that we keep doing that, because our public health is actually very much linked to our economic health as well. So I think that's very, very important to talk about. And I hope we talk about that a bit more tonight. And just finally on vaccines, I know everyone's excited. I'm excited. And I think, you know, the day before yesterday, we had this amazing day where we're like, oh my, we got vaccines that are starting to come out. But unfortunately, today we announced the greatest number of deaths in British Columbia in one day. So I know that that was a very sad day for us. So the point is that, yes, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think I like your image, Brock, of the tunnel. But we're maybe like halfway through the tunnel. We have to remember, you can see the light, but we can't just stop being vigilant. And I think that's the one message I'd like to get out to people tonight, is we need to keep that vigilance right through to the end, right through over that finish line and run over that finish line. So I'm looking forward to talking about some of the help and the recovery benefits that we've had. I'm sure we will get all those out over the questions, but I really appreciate the time, and looking forward to what the mayor has to say.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bob. A very compelling way to tie some of those issues together. So thank you for doing that. And yes, our next comments will come from the mayor of the city of Maple Ridge, Mayor Mike Morden. Mayor Mike, can I turn things over to you?
Thanks, Brock, very much. Yes, it was a very interesting presentation, and I actually wrote quite a few notes on that. So thanks for some takeaways. I'll be doing some homework, but that's not unusual right now. There is a lot of homework being done by everybody. Never had to learn so hard in all my life on the fly. The city of Maple Ridge's response was, I sort of feel like the frontline MASH unit at times. And, you know, it was an immediate demand to be able to access various things that people needed. And it was like our whole community plan that we put together for our council strategic plan was actually nearly purpose built for dealing with the pandemic to some degree. Community safety being key, health, housing, making sure that we a strong focus on our economy. And then of course the environment became really, really critical as well. We could actually finally see what our environment used to look like when you shut down motor vehicle, and all you've got left is 110,000 people a day in Metro Vancouver using our bus system. And the skies cleared, and as I would come home many times at the end of the night, I would see coyotes out on my roadway, and it was quite impressive what our community, obviously, you know, wildlife started to appear, and you know, there's some lessons to be taken from that. A lot of things that sort of said, let's get back to basics, you know, connection with family, appreciation of nature and our wonderful environment that we have here in Maple Ridge. And also to never have we seen so much influx of tourism for people coming into our community. And literally, you know, Minister Bear will definitely tell you that we were overrun. Our parks, both from Metro Vancouver, municipal, as well as provincial parks, tremendous amount of usage. Staff were in there many times a day to having to prepare for, you know, cleaning to facilitate, you know, non-transmission, if you will, and make sure that they were safe. and absolutely unbelievable amounts of use. I actually really needed that respite myself. So that was a once-a-day trip for me into the park with my wife and a dog, and just to be able to unwind from a lot of incredible stress that I know that many people in business and many people in our community were dealing with then and today. And I think that we've gotten a little COVID fatigue, and we've got to actually reset the clock a little bit and make sure that we get back to those basics on hand washing and using masks, being respectful for others, and making sure that we reach out and we help people wherever we possibly can, and to be a little bit more forgiving when people are under extreme tension right now. Finances are tight, people are in a lot of crisis, and let's face it, our senior population are quite isolated, and there are many there that we need to be concerned about. I sort of came up with some adjectives as in requirements for good municipal response, and I think it's pretty much good response for everybody. And it was the need to be flexible, to be very nimble, and our transit system is a great example of. I chair the mobility committee at TransLink, and we suddenly had to take on a whole new look at how it is that we need to use public transit, what we needed to facilitate, and to try and really focus on getting people out of their cars. Electrifying our fleets and making sure that we're not contributing negative things into our environment as much as possible, and getting people into public transit in whatever form it was. So creativity, a lot of innovation, being responsive to people's needs was critical. And I was called upon by a couple of people to repatriate them from foreign countries. And, you reach out to federal partners and you start making calls, and, a lady that's having trouble with her daycare, these are all priorities on an individual basis, and you just simply step to the plate. And it's on a triage basis, hence my use of the term MASH unit, because you were literally running that kind of a ship. And, you can't do this alone. So we do this through partnerships, through senior government, through a lot of nonprofits, volunteers in the community, people that are in business that suddenly got themselves into businesses they didn't expect to be in. And an amazing piece of innovation. I remember receiving some, one of our members of the business community, I won't name them, because they actually really captured an opportunity and were very quite successful. And then when things started to, if you will, acclimatize to the pandemic, they lost all that traction that they actually had when they stepped forward quickly. So, those are those entrepreneurs that really see a gap and a way to go, and they just take it full steam ahead. So, be there to listen to people, be prepared to facilitate things, provide advice, be a friendly ear for those that are having just simply struggles in various things. And, we're social animals, and we need to be there to help each other. And I really feel that we actually really did step up. The political lines did drop. I'm on phone calls every day with ministers initially, with MLAs, health authorities, the works. Never talked or listened so hard in all my life, because it was important, because people's health was number one. And politics could not get in the way of that. We saw other examples in other countries where that maybe wasn't really the best steps forward. And I would say that British Columbia, even though 500 is a tough number, north of that, we've done a pretty impressive job. And you have to trust in the health professionals. And yes, there's some conflicting informations out there that people have trouble reconciling. But ultimately, when you look across this worldwide, I think we've fared very well, and we need to, as was mentioned, make sure we focus on how to get to the other end of the tunnel, and maybe not pay too much credence to those that think that they know better and they're going to do things differently, and that's reckless. And actually, it's disrespectful for other people, especially when you have conversations with people that have had COVID-19, buried loved ones, and not been able to even facilitate that process of grieving. So, a lot of difficulties going on. We're here to facilitate, to help. I've facilitated some really bizarre things, Brock. I tell you, 1,100 liters of hand sanitizer went through my truck. Over 4,000 masks, you name it. And, dollars changed hands, but just getting stuff into the front lines where you needed to. As I said, repatriation of people. I never thought in my wildest dream I'd be doing something like that. So, it's there. We're here to listen. We're there to help people and work with our partners, the BIA, the Chamber of Commerce. As I said, the school district, I connected really well with the school district because, of course, we have a lot of common shared space together, community space. And, myself and the CEO, normally the political and the staff lines are quite separated. it was all dropped. We were in meetings together. We simply didn't have time. We needed to get the information and then facilitate it out onto the ground. So with that, it was just a huge task just to simply be a facilitator of best pathways forward for everybody and to take the information. And if you didn't have what they needed, to go get it for them. So that was what I sort of really felt my role was. Very well supported by my council. My staff are super responsive, and the communications department were on overdrive. So, that was a really key piece to, as the information filtered, from the ministerial orders coming all the way down through, very critical to get that out into an understandable format that people can understand and, come to terms with as well, right? So I'll leave it there if that's okay with you, Brock. And I think that it was just, being responsive to people's needs and doing everything you possibly can to help them.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really interesting insights there, particularly into the sense that we've all had to learn to do so many new things in the midst of this pandemic, things we didn't expect to ever have to do. But in doing that as well, that notion that, you're continually having to balance the kind of the policy and process side of things with the human side of things, and that sort of recognizing that we have to be focused on both to make real progress. I do want to start to pose some more general questions back to the group of you. And this first one, I think some of our questions may be more relevant to some levels of government than others, but I think this first question really applies to all three of the levels of government that you're coming from today. What would you say is your top priority for helping businesses and individuals during this upcoming recovery phase? And Mark, maybe I'll start with you, and then we'll work our way back through the group.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to be connecting with the businesses, and I know that I've made that effort just to visit businesses one-on-one to hear what the issues are, and then to go forward. Sometimes they're with supports, with information. That listening, that engagement is key. So, and I appreciate. I know that I think Inike here with the Downtown Business Association is here. So appreciate the work she's doing. The Chamber of Commerce, of Commerce, Flory, I saw her name also. Just all these representations. I mean, that type of engagement is really important. So, we've been ongoing conversations with businesses having challenges, for example, even importing stuff at the border because of different of issues, or because in the agricultural industry. So there's all these different things, and so having to deal with ministers and to ministries to help to alleviate and to walk them forward. And so we've had a lot of successes, and so I'm happy about that. And if there's people in the business community that need more help on different issues, give me a call, and we'll do everything we can to help.
Excellent, thank you. And Lisa, what would you say has been your top priority for helping businesses and individuals?
Great, thanks, Brock. And Bob and I are going to alternate back because we are both speaking for the province, and so whichever of us unmutes will be the one speaking for the answer. But really, truly, the most important thing we can do for our economy, the most important thing we can do for our businesses is to keep people safe and healthy through this pandemic. It has been our government's #1 priority. And we've made that commitment collectively, and we've made good progress. Here in BC, we've led the country and returned to 96% of job levels since before the pandemic. We had 35,000 new jobs were created in October, and we have unemployment down to 8%. Now, that's great news, but we know people and businesses are still struggling, and we know there's lots more work to do. So that's why we have our COVID recovery benefit going out, $1,000 for families, $500 for individuals who are able income tested threshold, but most importantly as well, we have $300 million in small and medium business grants. One of the main things we heard through the pandemic, and we continue to hear from businesses that are struggling, is liquidity, and they don't need another loan program. They don't they aren't able to take on more debt. What they need is a grant. And so we have a $30,000, up to $30,000 for small and medium businesses, up to $40,000 if you're a tourism business. But really, what we need to continue doing as well, and we're taking very seriously, is work to improve our healthcare. Which is important to keep our economy going, as Bob said in his opening remarks. We were able to bring an urgent primary care center here in Maple Ridge to Haney Place Mall and open up 2 primary care networks. And the temporary urgent primary care center has now been converted into a COVID testing site. It's that kind of investment in healthcare, the investments we're making in long-term care, which I'm sure we'll get to later as well, that keep our communities safe and keep our residents able to continue participating in our economy. But there's a lot more to say on this. We have a $3 billion infrastructure recovery investment fund, which is, really focused on building those community projects that will help support those local jobs, that will help, keep economic development happening in our province, in communities everywhere. So, here in our region, that can currently, one of the things that the infrastructure recovery program will do is help build the replacement for Pitt Meadows Secondary School. So these are just some of the steps we're taking, but the number one thing we can do, and the number thing we are committed to do, and we've made that very clear since the beginning of the pandemic, is to keep British Columbians safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. And Mike, maybe I'll put this to you as well. I know there's obviously lots of things going on, including the fact that you and your staff have put together this Community Leaders Forum tonight. But what would you say is your top priority for helping business and individuals?
I would say the fact that we're running this, Brock, is a real good indicator that this is, we chatted a few weeks back about whether or not we should even run this. And, given the health pandemic that we're in today, but we felt that it was more, just as important to, and it has been, to ensure that the economy is running and that needs to be a very, very strong focus. Obviously, health is number one, concern for Canadians, for British Columbians, and for people that live in Maple Ridge. And I would say that if there were some takeaways on what I'd like to see happen, what we feel, what we are in the city of Maple Ridge also, we had significant financial shortfalls in the city. A mill site, over $500,000 in tax revenue, a casino not operating another $1 million. We've got several outstanding accounts receivable that we don't have yet, from other areas that we're hoping to be able to collect. And we would love to pass relief on to our taxpayers, but we've got services to keep running, and that's very difficult to do when we're not allowed to run deficit budgets. So for us, we have no choice, but we got to look for income sources, and that has to come from the economy, and it has to come from creation of jobs. So those are critical pieces for us. And we do that through obviously working with our senior government partners here, making sure that, those people like Work BC that are out there trying to facilitate jobs, we make sure that they've got the resources they need, and if they don't, we've never been so accessible before as we are today. I'll speed dial Lisa on a Sunday or whoever I need to, or Corlina with the school district, or Mark or Bob, whoever I need to get to, and they're there. We're having a conversation. I can tell you that didn't happen 3 years ago. There's no way. I just would suspect that was just not the case. But we do this because we have to. We have to be responsive, and we have to get the information quickly. I would say some opportunities now, let's call them opportunities, are that, the federal government's issued out a lot of money, and significant numbers. And I have great concern over the debt loads that we're going to be saddled with, that we are saddled with today. And when we're doing this, I think we really need to make sure that the monies are going to places where there's a return on that and the need is actually there. So that's going to require some decent assessment work, because I'm seeing already that CERB monies are now going into collections. And people were given CERB money, weren't entitled to it, needs to be collected. So that may have been a need of the day, but it's got to get done. So I would hope that the federal partners now in systems will start to look at making sure money's got a return to it, because we can't, we're not going to get out the other end of this. It's not growing on trees. So we're responsible to make sure our services run, and we're very, very mindful of the fact that, you know, as we're issuing out a 3.6% tax increase this year, we're doing that only because we have to. We don't want to. I would love to say no. We'll just forego it. And we came to a difficult decision within our council to do that, and simply because there isn't sufficient relief coming all the way down to fill up some of those various gaps and to generate things that we need to in delivering the plan. We can't run debt. If we could run debt, I think we probably would at this point. I know that was facilitated, but it's a last resource option for us. We don't want to do it. But you know what? It's creativity. I remember 2 years ago sitting down with the owners of the shopping mall here at Haney Place, and Lisa Bob will snicker now. And you know, we talked about a call that I got from Fraser Health, and they said, "Mike, I need 10,000 feet." And there it was. And you see it now as the urgent and primary care center, and that started with a conversation with a need. And you know what? That isn't exactly a typical use for a shopping mall, but it activated the mall. It brings people there in a positive base. It's looking after a healthcare need, and as I said, it's like we got a memo that this was going to be a need that needed to be fulfilled, because if we didn't have it, it wouldn't be there today. And that's an important resource for our community. So that's what we get when we work together and we look for these opportunities that normally wouldn't be there. You know, that does not normally fit with one's idea of a shopping mall, but it's there. It's a wonderful service to have, and it's, you know, healthcare is a very, very important piece here. So I guess that's the short of it for us, is that we want to make sure that we keep our services running, but our economy is really critical for us. We are essentially what I would say, well, with 3 percentage points off West Vancouver. So on the residential commercial combination. So we're next to a bedroom community, that's real. And our council is very committed to ensuring that we develop and do everything we possibly can to build a local economy, jobs. And in this pandemic, actually, it's become very clear to us that it's very, very important for people actually to be working close to home. We've managed to get to some of us 2 hours, 3 hours back into our days to not commute. 65% of Maple Ridge people were leaving the community to go to work. I think that they've actually got, a lot of them got quite a bit of time back into their lives, even though they've got some stress to come with it. I think there's takeaways from all of this. There's a lot of learnings, and we've got to make sure we really lever on those and facilitate people to have flexible zoning, to be able to do a lot of these things from their home environments. And making sure that we do our part where we can and work together with everybody else to facilitate a great local strong economy, which is high on our list. It was before the pandemic, and is now more significantly important than ever.
Excellent, thank you. And Mike, you mentioned a couple of interesting things there. One of them was the fact that you had Lisa on speed dial to sort of deal with issues as they arise. And maybe this is something I'll pick up on and pass up to Bob and then on to Mark. But you know, one of the things that's characterized this whole situation is the fact that every level of government needs to be working together. And I guess, you know, there's questions around how you do that practically. How do you manage the communications? How do you work across party lines or ideological lines? So can I get each of you, maybe Bob first and then Mark, to reflect on that a little bit, and in particular to maybe give some examples of some things that have gone really well in terms of that partnership and collaboration?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I think it's an excellent one. And I think, as I said in my opening remarks, there are examples, for example, like the Salvation Army that we worked together on, which was great. And I think what we found is, you know, partisanship during the pandemic just evaporated in the early days. Everyone just parked all of that and just said, look, you know, at the end of the day, we work for the citizens of our community, and it doesn't matter about our politics. What matters is keeping people safe in the middle of a global pandemic. So we were all on speed dial. There was no question if Mike needed to get hold of me, or if Mark needed to get hold of me, or if there was a minister that had to get involved, we made it happen, and we all worked together because we knew that was the right thing to do. So I think what I hope is that spirit of working together will continue. And I think that presents an opportunity for us, because we have been working so well together, especially between all levels of government. And now we have an opportunity to continue that, especially in the recovery. And so I think working forward, that would be a great thing that, I mean, a silver lining out of a pandemic would be, this continuing this spirit of cooperation moving forward, because it, as you said, as everyone's been saying, we're not gonna recover from this today or tomorrow. This is a long recovery. It's a long path back, and it's going to be different for different sectors and different people. And so that's why this spirit of working together must continue, and I think it will continue, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, just to add to that, I would say that quite a bit of the working together is at the staff level. Like my staff working, say, with Lisa or Bob, if issues come forward, and that collaboration is really important, because you can't just be in a silo. Well, this is federal, or this is the city, or this is provincial. There's no communication. That makes it tough, or just saying, okay, no, sorry, this is a provincial, and hang up the phone. No, I think it's really important to help people along, navigate through this, because sometimes they don't know, who to phone. They'll phone the MP's office, or they'll phone the MLA, or they'll phone City Hall, and they just don't know where to go. And I think that part of that, our jobs is just to help and to walk them along on these different issues. And I it's really, the collaboration is essential. I know that there's projects, for example. I know there's been announcements even for the 4-laning between the rest of the in Maple Ridge, between 240th or 48th, something like that, to 272nd. So there's federal dollars, there's provincial dollars. So I know that there's just a working together on projects like this. That a lot of the major projects have got federal and provincial funding, and also in collaboration with the city also. So that's really important. Or even on issues like the opioid crisis. This is something that really touches all of us, and working together. It's not just, I know that it's health officially is under the province, but it is, we all feel it. And so what can we do on as far as helping this? Because honestly, there's been 3 times more people that have died in British Columbia this year from overdose than from COVID. That's not underplaying COVID, the seriousness, but it just goes to show you that we're facing another real serious crisis also. And so that working together with this is also really important. So.
Excellent. And I have to say that, a lot of times we pay lip service to kind of good communications and partnerships, but having worked through 2 or 3 preparatory meetings with all of you on this, it really is fascinating to see the way in which you interact, the way in which you communicate. It's a very positive example for a lot of other communities that do struggle with that. And I think a real credit to what's going on locally. So I want to sort of turn in a slightly different direction, and maybe I'll start with Mike on this one. One of the things we think about when we confront a problem is what are the potential solutions or innovative approaches that we could use. We have the expression, necessity is the mother of invention. So, there's a lot of new necessities coming out of this pandemic. What are some of the most innovative things that you've seen out there? What are businesses doing, or what are community members doing to really kind of take fresh and new and innovative approaches to solving problems? And have you seen some examples of things that you think are really going to stick around in the longer run that are coming out of those new ideas?
First, the use of technology. I mean, we did that in the city just to mobilize services and put them into an online form. We didn't want to stop our work as a government, so we went completely online. I would say that we went through the various forms. Zoom ended up being the sort of pick of choice, I guess, with most features and most flexibility. But I had a Zoom meeting yesterday, spent all day on Zoom. It was quite an 8-hour trip. I have to say that's quite a test for humans to do. It was workshop, and in there was polling being done. There was breakout rooms, and all of this is being facilitated within the software set of Zoom. So, you can do a lot in there, and, you take the breaks as you need to. And anyways, technology, my IT department really stepped up and has stepped up to facilitate a lot of things in the city with respect to the services that we need to deliver. We're learning every day to do better, and we'd be prepared to listen to various customers of the city that aren't able to connect with the services that they normally would be able to get to. When the doors were closed, they're now back open. I would say that they're simply just not able to respond as quick because of the COVID safety protocols in place. I'm very, very familiar as somebody that works in the construction and development sector myself, that trades need to access people. They need to get frontline connections to those that can give you an interpretation on a building plan, or how this is supposed to go together and get it approved. And all those things often happen in person, and that's a very difficult connection to make over a telephone or over email. And so some of those things. But proud to say that construction development sector has posted greater numbers than ever before. And so that tells me that, they're one of the greatest employers around British Columbia, right? 10% of the GDP is there. And and they didn't miss much through this pandemic here in British Columbia, as well as locally here. We are proud to employ a lot, and I think that there's a huge opportunity there to do a lot more. We build a lot of housing here, and we're a growing community, 90,000 today, Brock, and we're going to go to 130 plus by 2040. So, that's the opportunity, and it's a complex business. It requires, skills training, and it requires, merchants that are there to be able to facilitate those supply chains for them, as well as we need to be able to facilitate an environment that allows them to get their work onto the ground and deliver it on an expedited basis. So that takes that technology piece to really make that work, and in combination with people helping people using technology. So we really had to start to think a lot about how to make technology work for us, and how it's been a bit of a barrier. I mean, we're having this conversation. I don't have a relationship with you, Brock. I feel like I know you now, but I mean, I do with the others on the screen here today, and many that are in the room here. So when I connect with them on video or on a phone, I'm speaking to somebody that I know personally. And so that's a much easier bridge to cross. When you're trying to make new bridges and new connections and build relationships to help people, that's more of a challenge in the Zoom format, in the video format, and we're having to overcome some barriers there to work our way through those things. But as was noted, through adversity, we are survivalists, as it's our natural thing to do as human species, and we reinvent ourselves because we must. And anyone that's in private sector, like myself for many, many years, still am, we have no choice. So you respond because you've got to, because that's how the bills are going to get paid. That's how you feed your family. And proud to say that we've done a lot to facilitate some great things. BIA and Chamber partnership to assemble some immediate website work to facilitate restaurant access, who's got so-and-so on sale, where you can go to, what the hours are that closed, where seniors can go for an hour to a retail outlet and not necessarily have to entertain crowds because they're concerned. So getting people to go back into your retail environments required a lot of trust and confidence in that it was safe space to enter into. And that's one of the most critical pieces that we need to make sure we facilitate. That's why these health orders are important. That's why people have to respect them, because now people feel comfortable to go there. So all those are moving parts that we see a lot of innovation on. I mean, because you have to. You can go to a restaurant, one of our main ones, I won't mention them, on 224th Street, and you can sit very close to somebody else because of all the Lexan shields that come in on wheels and are mobile and modular, so that instantly you can create mandatory social distancing, essentially, through meeting the WorkSafe regulations. And it's because they had to, because their survival depends upon it, and people have to go to eat there, and we need to eat. So win-wins, and lots of that kind of innovation going on, particularly online, for sure. And I would just encourage people to support our local merchants and not to forget them, because I know that there's a lot very accessible in the online platforms these days that aren't necessarily local merchandise. So support your local economy, because it's going to come back and around to help you as well, to have those stores close by where you can get the food you need, rather than can you imagine having to order everything online? I can't even imagine not going to a corner store and being able to get what I need on a dime. And they're dependent upon all of the business, not just a tiny little slice of it, right? So support local, please.
Excellent. And maybe Lisa or Bob, I'll look to one
Yeah,
of you.
sure. I'm happy to jump in. So the really interesting thing, again, during COVID, one of the things that public health did, which was really interesting and I thought very important, was instead of saying we're the experts on how each sector should deal with innovating to allow people to come, they actually went through WorkSafe BC to each sector. So, I mean, a really good example of that is the film industry. And the film industry was able to come back probably faster than possible because they worked very closely with public health and with WorkSafe to develop those strategies to keep their workplace safe. And the same thing happened with restaurants, and the same thing happened with gyms and other things. And I know we're seeing some shut down just because of outbreaks, but keep in mind, Brock, that this province never shut down construction. This province never shut down industry. And that's part of the reason why British Columbia is so well poised to bounce back. In fact, even though we really went down in terms of unemployment, we've actually bounced back, even in the middle of this second wave, primarily because of the innovation and primarily because the industries and the sectors that know their business were the ones that helped develop those businesses, those innovations. And I think another example is the legislature. It's incredible. We have this virtual legislature that the clerk's office and everyone spent a massive amount of time making it work. And so when I vote, it's like, nay, yay, nay. It's like we have all these systems now to vote online. And so using the technology, using all of the different things that we can use, whether it's masks or whether it's the plexiglass. So it's absolutely amazing and impressive how industry, businesses, and individuals have adapted. And look at us here. I mean, I know there's not a lot of you can't pick up the cues, but we're adapting and we're doing a good job. So there you go.
Excellent. Mark, anything to add?
Yeah, no, as I've been touring businesses, I've just been impressed with the innovation that I've been seeing and how the businesses are adapting to the situation. I noticed one of the participants is Brock McDermott. He's CEO of Meridian Meats, and here in town, it's actually they got eight stores in the lower mainland, and the headquarters is here in Maple Ridge. I think got about 60 employees here locally, and just how they're doing it, how they're making the changes, the health precautions and all that, but they're doing very well. I met with Keith Bosman. He owns or started up VIP Soap, which is actually in Mission in here, but just the technology that they're using, how they've adapted their lines of product and have been exporting. So these things are really positive. I think that and this is mentioned a number of times, the fact that more and more people are working from home, that actually bodes well for Maple Ridge as a for people to remain at home, to innovate and actually to live here. I think it's a big draw for this community because they don't say, well, we want to stay downtown, but have that long commute. They can stay here. So I think that's great for Maple Ridge. And I do agree with previous comments as far as supporting our local business, in whatever way we can, even if we're another business. What are some other businesses we can maybe support here? I'm in my office right now. I went across Don Fritos. If you want some El Salvadorian food, great restaurant. But no, as far as making efforts to patronize different one of our restaurants and different businesses.
Thank you. I want to shift gears a little bit, and there are certainly key themes or key ideas that drive a lot of our thinking about economic development and economic recovery. And one of those for a lot of communities, Maple Ridge included, is the notion of talent. How do we attract talent to our communities? How do we retain the talent that we have in our communities? And that could be talent in the sense of the arts and cultural sector. It could be talent in terms of youth and the young people in our communities. It could be talent related to specific industries, but it's one of those things that we struggle with, and we're going to need that talent as we start to think about recovery. So what are the best ways to begin to develop, attract, and retain that talent in Maple Ridge? Maybe I'll start with Mike again on this one, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Well, okay, I'm going to start to feel picked on here, Brock. It's twice in a row here that you've nailed me out of the gate. Okay, so let's talk about that. What makes a great community? Well, that's complete services and opportunities to do things. And you know what? I sort of always considered Maple Ridge when I first came here a long time ago. as that opportunity. I saw the mountains that you see in the background behind me, and like many, this was just simply a beautiful community. It looked like it had everything here that I felt was right for my family when I was just starting a family. And now that's the same for my children that have come back here, and they've been to the more urban environments, and they've come back because of our environment here. And so we have great tourism opportunities here. We saw that huge time. We never saw so many visitors, and the people that were so upset about not being able to get into Golden Ears Park, and that was by my old front door that I just moved away from. We used to post 300,000 visitors there a year. I would suggest that well, Lisa could probably give you the numbers, but it was very, very, very busy going up through that roadway off 232nd. And we have a great arts community here. It's a bit of a hidden gem, but for those that are close to the community, they know that there's a strata within our being, if you will, in the Maple Ridge being that is strong in the arts and culture. And great parks. We've got a lot of great outdoors, not only the more manicured versions, but of course, the great outdoors as you head deep 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you're into nowhere. So, it's not unusual to see bears and deer and all the rest of those things coming down through our streets. I would suggest that we have an opportunity here, and maybe we've got those forms, but we could use some other entertainment. Talked about this with council that I'd really like to see us to move the needle on entertainment to sort of supplement this. People need that, especially in a time like today. So we would run programs in the downtown core Memorial Park where we would have a big screen up and run a movie for the families, right? So we now need to be able to facilitate those things, but we have to be considerate for social distancing, because but at least in outdoors it's actually easier to do it than it is to do it in an indoor environment right now today. So those are sort of a few of the if you will, the pluses on the plus side. And if we're keeping people home, we really need to lever up on this so that you really feel you have everything here, that you actually don't need to leave your communities. So you imagine for a moment that we were a community of a primary and only marketplace. There are no secondary markets to us. We're going to build our own economy, and we're going to do that because we have to. Making sure that we've got food supply, making sure that we've got all of our environmental considerations correct, making sure that we're facilitating people to be able to start up businesses here. And that's where we've got to get to those partnerships with others that can fund those things, because municipal governments can't. They just don't have the ability to do that. But there's lots of other programs through the federal government and the provincial government where we can do that. So that's pretty much what it really comes down to, is building that complete community. And it's not just about a home. It's about a whole series of things that go, Maple Ridge's lifestyle is awesome. I got everything I need here. Not that I have to leave. And that's what we've always heard for various things. Now we're here because we have to be. And so we really need to pick up that as a huge cue to say we got to really, really take advantage of that and make that happen.
And Lisa, is this one you'd like to pick up on as well?
Yes, thank you. So Maple Ridge is so poised to answer this question. We're such a great community for families and individuals to come and choose to live and work in it. And it's for a number of reasons. You have to take a look at the services that are available. And then, as Mike was adding on in the end of his answer there, the quality of life. And that's what people are looking for. You need to make sure you have the healthcare available, having urgent primary care centers, having a hospital that's, well maintained, making sure that your schools are seismically sound, that they're facilitated, you have new modern learning facilities that people are excited to put their children in, conducive to learning in the 20th century, making sure we have those outdoor spaces, those parks that are available, and Maple Ridge has an abundance of those. Childcare, that's huge. Making sure that you're able, to live and work in your community, ensure that your kids are cared for. We were able to open in the past few years 700 new spaces of childcare here in Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows. These are those type of investments that governments can make to make sure that communities are livable. And then, as Mike said, it's making sure that you have that quality of life too, making sure you have the entertainment available, but really when some of the big companies are making their decisions, it's making sure you have access to those outdoor spaces that, and that they're well maintained and that you can use them. But once you combine that all, you take a look at a community like Maple Ridge and you tick all of those boxes. And so, we'll continue each level of government to do our part in those pieces, continue to invest in the healthcare, the childcare, the schools, continue to invest in our parks and make sure that we remain a community that people are proud to call home.
Excellent. One of the ideas that I touched on a little earlier was the sort of the connections between sustainability and environmental concerns and what we're learning coming out of this pandemic. It was interesting looking at the Nanos research poll. Before the pandemic hit us this year, I mean, one of the number one concern in Canadians' minds was the state of the environment. And I guess I'm curious as to what each of you sort of feel we have learned from the pandemic about how sustainability needs to be part of our approach to recovery. It needs to be part of the way that we rebuild an economy that is both stronger and different than what we may have had in the past. Bob, is that something you would be comfortable speaking to?
Sorry, I just have to unmute. I lost you. Sorry. I don't know what I did.
Here, I'll take that one if Bob's struggling on the.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, guys. I hit something and I don't know what happened. I apologize. We're all living in this, right? Anyway, I did want to. Sure, I'd love to talk about that. And one of the things that's so important to look at is the fact there's a few things that the pandemic shone a light on, and a few of those are things like food security. We look at the supply chains that there was real risks with the supply chains, and an enormous amount of effort had to be done at all levels of the government to ensure that we had those supply chains. So that's part of it, but it also says, hey, maybe we should also be looking at how can we make sure that our food security is strong and things like that. And then you start thinking about our water, and you start thinking about our rivers and our oceans and our fish and our environment. And so all of those things are very, very important. And I think this pandemic is actually not only shone a light on it, but it's actually given us an opportunity, because when we spend dollars, public dollars, to bring the economy back, why don't we bring the economy back better? Why don't we think about moving the dial on things like the environment? And I think that the Clean BC plan that our government developed in the last government has sort of set that path. And we're already investing heavily in zero emission vehicles with the rebate program. I was so excited. One of the things I wanted to do was buy an electric vehicle. I feel it's important as a local politician to walk the walk. And so I got my electric vehicle, and I'm really proud of that. And I think that people do have pride when they make decisions, personal decisions that are good for the environment. And I think doing things like our zero emission vehicle rebate is really important. And in fact, last week we doubled the rebates for charging stations at homes and apartments and condos, because we need that infrastructure as well. And in addition to that, there's been a recent signing of an agreement with the federal government to provide funding for TransLink and BC Transit and BC Ferries to basically to improve those public transit services so that we can actually get people out of their gas vehicles and into public transit. So that's really important, so that we can invest in public transit and make that transit clean. So for me, just to put a point on it, is the investments that we can make in the recovery can also help us with reaching our goals with climate change, with our carbon reduction, and just making our environment a better place. Thank you.
And Mark, any thoughts on the links between sustainability and recovery?
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to go to a point that Mike made earlier as far as the spending that the federal government is doing is not sustainable. It is right now we are printing the money. It's just going directly from Bank of Canada, going directly to the government. I know that people were in a crisis and people need that, but we need the supports and all that. But this is not sustainable. We're at a $1.1 trillion deficit right now, or a debt load right now. It's going to impact our credit ratings. It's going to impact the interest charges and tax rates, and then that goes on businesses. So this is not sustainable. So when we start talking about sustainability, I think we need to go beyond just thinking what the government is going to do, and for the government actually to get out of the way and to allow businesses to operate with, watching how much regulation over-regulation just kills. It adds costs. It adds costs to the buildings. It adds costs to everything right there. So I think we need to really watch out the red tape, the regulations. It puts so much pressure, and it's the user, it's the taxpayer, it's the citizens that actually pay for that. So that's really a key thing is us staying out of the way, allowing businesses to innovate. I think that to take less because expenditures are going to be increased taxes, but how can we do it so that that businesses, the individuals keep more of their money? So I mean, right now we're in this crisis. We need the funds right there, but we need to slowly get off of that. To move away from all those supports so that we're operating our own, because currently 57% of our economy is government dollars, which is taxpayer dollars. Actually, it's just being printed, and the history has taught us that just printing money and devalues our currency, it devalues our purchasing power. So we're going to get through this right here, but for governments just to kind of not allow businesses, individuals take the front seat, and us kind of move in the back.
Thank you, Mark. Mike,
am I allowed a rebuttal?
Actually, I'll take that one. So if that's okay with you. So the city of Maple Ridge has been actually very considerate towards many of these things. Our old recreation facility that has been completely revitalized. Well, before, when I was originally first a councillor back in 2008, we launched a solar panel program on there, and it fully paid for itself and put lower costs to operate in place for, it was all done and paid for in 10 years. Those are the kind of things that the city's been doing for a long time, are actually part of one of our pillars of our strategic plan. Pre-pandemic, we didn't have any notice on all of these things, was to really give some due consideration towards our environment. But as we know, if you take a look at cities like Stockholm and the cities that really you want to aspire to build, which are one that have everything, not only from a social perspective, but from a financial perspective, is also from an environmental perspective. It's got to be done with all three pillars. There's got to be consideration to each of them. But as you look at those three, and if you get all of those checked off correctly and balanced, and then supplement those with post-secondary education and great public transit, you're really going to have a city there that's going to be an amazing city. And so those are the focuses of where we need to go when and our council just passed in alignment with the province of British Columbia on GHG emission reductions. At the TransLink table, the Mayor's Council have been extremely strong about electrification in our fleets, and we actually canceled orders and switched gears to go due north onto electrification. We got to enjoy quite a different environment all of a sudden, and it was a real wake-up call through this pandemic. And there was opportunity in there. So the City of Maple Ridge has received a rapid bus at the beginning of this year, and we just about lost it through pandemic. And thanks to some immediate relief funding that was provided through the province as well as through the federal government, that we got to keep our rapid bus. And that was so critical. We are regional town center number 8 in the Metro Vancouver region. And this was seriously important for us to have that dedicated transit corridor established, because we signal a lot of development and a lot of density to go in tandem with this, to attract the investments into this area, to use our infrastructure wisely, which is part of that whole equation when you're trying to build a sustainable community. It isn't necessarily just from one pillar's perspective. You know, and in us planning what is known as the Lougheed Corridor Plan, which is just endorsed by our council in principle. This is taking all the way from 203rd Street to 222nd Street, just about downtown between Lougheed and Dewdney Trunk Road, and essentially taking the lid off of it and saying, we're going to densify that. And we're going to take our residential base and we're going to lift it up off the bottom floor and we're going to put it above the bottom floor, and not necessarily to restrict how many floors we go to. We need to allow private sector and investment sector to decide, you know, working in tandem with our planning people to decide what this is going to look like. But we want to be innovative. We want to make sure that we've got the balance just right. And staff, to their absolute credit, have put a complete green corridor right down the center of this, where there's going to be walking routes and cycling routes and everything else. So you've got the internal relief valve, if you will, with parks and green space, where people who are living in towers can get out there and stretch their legs, and they can also go to a drugstore close by, and they can get into a bus and get all the services they need. And those are sustainable communities, and that's the way to do it right. So, you know what, we've taken some pretty brave steps there as a city, I would say. It's certainly a significant change in maybe some of the development here, and that's going to dovetail nicely into what the downtown core has been planned to be when it comes to full fruition. So I'm talking about this Lougheed Corridor sector of our community. This is just a 20-year look from today. So downtown core is probably, I would think it's about 30–40% underway for redevelopment. You can see significant change there with, you know, Tom Meyer's project. That's 1/6 of our downtown core that's being completely revitalized. We have 5 cranes in our downtown core. I can't say that in the time that I've lived here in Maple Ridge that I've ever seen 5 cranes here before. So that's pretty cool. And for those that want to be critical of development, I'm biased towards investment. I don't mind it at all, as long as we get it all in balance and we make sure that we provide a safe community, we provide all the housing forms that we need, but also that we ensure that people have got access to great healthcare and services that they also need to, so that we've got the whole community looked after from end to end. And so you may have heard about this, Brock, or not, but we created in collaboration with senior government as well, but from a municipal perspective, a social safety net. It's called the Community Social Safety Initiative. I'm pretty proud of my council for supporting this. This is about ensuring that we have a safe community, because we have people that are troubled in our society that have been affected by social drivers, and they're doing things which are bad, that are harmful, but they do these things because of things that have happened to them in their lives, and it's our job to intervene and help them move forward in their lives. But it's also our obligation to ensure that we have safe space and that we are able to facilitate investment and people do get the help that they need. And so this is a pretty brave and bold plan, I would say. And you know, working together with the province of British Columbia, we've actually made some pretty healthy headway on the program. We're looking for some significant fundings to fill in some of it. And some of it is simply, as Lisa and Bob will tell you, as well as Mark, sometimes these things take time to get down to the ribbons, you know, where's the funding? And there's a lot of preliminary work to get there, but I'm really proud of the fact that we've made several significant strides locally, and with commitment, you know, really going to be proud of what this product's going to become. So that's kind of a story I took over the table here a little bit, but pretty excited about that for the future of the city of Maple Ridge. And we'll get there by working together with our partners as well, because they're all really passionate about this as well. From those in social service provision, nonprofits, government, because you will never make headway unless you've got buy-in, and we have buy-in, so that's just a phenomenal step.
Excellent, thank you, Mike. This next one maybe is digging a little bit deeper, in the sense that you know, none of us expected this pandemic. None of us knew what was going to happen. We all learned new things as we've worked our way through this. We're all still trying to learn new things, new ways of dealing with this. If you had to describe the biggest lesson that you've learned, what would that be? What is it that you've taken away from this that may change the way you do things moving forward? Lisa or Bob, do you want to start with that?
Thanks. Thank you. Really, I mean, everyone will say that you know, the ability for all of us to come together it has been the most important lesson. The ability for British Columbians to stand united against a cause in remaining safe, the abilities for communities to band together to help serve their most vulnerable, whether it be through food banks and volunteer drivers, those type of amazing projects, whether it be through governments who put any notion of partisanship aside, come together to build programs, that help everybody across the province, both people and businesses. And then it really did a lot to highlight the gaps that we have. I mean, we just have to take a look at long-term care and see how, decisions in the past to allow contract flipping and to allow workers to work in multiple sites with low-paying wages added to what was an unforeseen problem. And so being able to find those gaps and fix them due to the pandemic has been a great tool that government's been able to use. But really it's been most inspiring to see the ability of everyone to come together and work towards a common cause of keeping people safe.
Do you mind if I say something small, Brock? All right. Not that I totally agree with Lisa, but I also wanted to say how important public health has been. And so one of the biggest lessons, if you just look at what's happened south of the border versus what happened here in Canada, and particularly here in British Columbia, was how we were able to mobilize as one, because of public health. And so I think it's a part of being Canadian. I think we all accept that Tommy Douglas had a pretty good idea. I know some of you may disagree. Mark's shaking his head there, but no, he's not good. No, but I'm just saying that I think that was something that I really took away. And then the other big thing is just how important it is to put people. If you put people in the middle of your policy, you make the right decisions. And I think that's what we're going to continue to do in our government. And I think that's a lesson that we learned. So very short, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Mark, any thoughts on the biggest lesson that you think we've learned?
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to just be really honest here. I think this time has really highlighted some things that we take for granted. And that taking for granted is each other. That, we need each other. That's the relationships. People are having a really tough time. Okay, they're having a really tough time. I saw somebody on a couple people on participants. One of the doctor here locally, and just with mental health, and just the struggles that people are having. I had a phone call a few days ago from somebody that's just really gone drinking to very considerable amount of drinking. And I talked to one of my staff. I said, you know what? Can you follow up on her next week? Let's follow up, because I'm concerned about her, being suicidal. And there's things we take for granted, even places of worship. You think, oh, that's always going to happen. Even like going the holiday season here, and you think, well, this isn't. Look what's happening. I know we're doing it for public health, but you know what? I guess. So, I just see how important we are to each other. We just need each other. I'm glad we have Zoom. We see each other. That's good. I'm glad that is a technology that they didn't have years ago that we are now able to avail themselves of. But I mean, seniors are really having a hard time. Their loneliness. I'm going to just be on. This is. I had one of my assistants told me that her friend, grandmother, 100 years old, requested maid because she's a very social person and life right there, but she was for understandable, for safety precautions, necessary safety precautions, she became depressed and isolated and requested and got it right there. So this is quite serious. So what is the lesson? Yeah, that how much we need each other, how much the things we take each other for granted, those getting together. but let's connect. Let's make those phone calls. Let's go out of the way because people are hurting. I'm feeling it a little bit. I'm a pretty upbeat person, but I mean, going into it, I think we all are. If we're honest with ourselves, we're all feeling it, and I think let's in this time, let's still reach out and be a shoulder, and say a prayer for each other. It's a hard time, okay, and but we're gonna get through this. We are gonna get through this. We have the vaccinations, we have other things that are coming, but we're gonna hang on and we'll do it together.
Thank you, Mark. I think that's a really important message. There's this kind of raw edge to what we're all going through that we don't get to talk about a lot, that we don't get to share as much as we need to in these kinds of times. So a really important issue to bring to the table. And maybe a way of kind of introducing the last question I want to have for this portion of the roundtable. And once we look at this one, maybe we'll go out to the audience for those Slido questions. But you've talked a little bit about that raw edge that still exists there and that we haven't fully addressed as we've worked our way through the pandemic. What else is out there that we aren't really thinking about, that we aren't properly understanding or anticipating or expecting? What is it that's kind of keeping you awake at night as you sort of worry about what might happen next that we're not prepared to deal with? Mayor Mike, maybe I can start with you.
It's surprising how many people that I've connected with that I never dreamed I would have connected with through a pandemic. This goes from everybody deep within the seniors community. Don Mitchell, who's looking after our seniors community. People that are in the nonprofit sectors, I've gone over and done personal thanks at social distance to those that have served as volunteers. Never would I have dreamed that I would have been asked to do these things, but I'm doing these things because these things are matter to people, that they're isolated in their homes and they need to be acknowledged for the great work that they've done for the years and years of service as volunteers. And we can't stop doing those things because people matter. And I'm just shocked at how many I've had people from connected with a group of people in Christian leadership groups that want to talk about what they can do to help. So there are many people that really want to step into the breach and help in the best way that they possibly can. And my advice is that don't judge, just listen, see what you can do to help. And yes, I know that there's some information that you might say, well, that doesn't make sense, or that's stupid, or whatever. You know what? There's reasons why these things are being done. It's not that we should say no. It's to say, hey, how do I help solve your problem today? What can I do to help you? What can we do to get you to where it is that you need to be, or what it is that you're trying to have? It's a challenge in your life to solve. And I can tell you that taking that approach to things in life, including in business, and how to facilitate things for people that are trying to run businesses or they've got barriers in trying to get things done. Very familiar with the construction development sector, as that's my stock and trade for years. And there are many in the same boat as them, and we've got to figure out how to solve problems for people to become better at what they do. And that might be somebody in the delivery of healthcare services at the front lines in a hospital. I think I'm on the board of ECOM. The people at ECOM deal with some significantly tragic things every day, and they don't even get to finally process that. And now there are people that are dealing with the death or the complete separation from loved ones, and they can't connect with them either to even go through those processes of grieving or be able to support them. And so now more than ever before, we need to do things differently. I never connected with my family in Europe or in the UK, but I do now because of Zoom. And we make special effort to try and make those things happen. And so, connection to people is so important, and being willing to help them and listen to them and work through their challenges, because there's many in life. There always has been and there always will be. But if we are prepared to say no quickly, we're going no place. If we're prepared to say, how can we help you solve that problem? How can we get there together? So that's my message. I would say that the most important thing is we take away from this is that it's the dropping all the lines, which we've done. We've done that in spades. Never had such great access to government in my entire, in the 2 years that we've worked through this. And yes, we've had disagreements about many things, but we're working together because we have to, because the people need us to put that stuff aside and get to the object of the exercise. So my message to take away here. And we need to do so with kindness and compassion and some thought that people are dealing with some difficulties. And you don't know. You just don't know what they're dealing with in their lives, right? So we can't assume anything. We just kind of, no judgment. What can we do to help you?
And this turn in the conversation is really striking a chord with some of the audience. We've got some great comments from Taylor Bean and Chelsea Meadis in the chat, sort of saying how important it is to be raising and talking about these kinds of issues. Minister Bear, anything that you would like to talk about in terms of the surprises that worry you a little bit on the horizon as we come out of this pandemic?
Great, thank you. I just to stick on the same vein with the mental health concerns that have been raised. This is something we've been seeing since the beginning of the pandemic, and we've been able to make a number of investments in and pivot to here in British Columbia. So we now have free online and virtual counseling services available to all British Columbians. I'm going to look up the address and type it in the chat bar when I'm done the question, so that anyone who would like to access it. But as for the worrying, it's the fatigue that Mark talked about earlier as well, or Mike, I'm sorry, I'm not sure which. Making sure that we continue to realize that we are in that second wave and that we do need to be vigilant, and that all this hard work that we've done, we want to make sure that we're able to keep flattening the curve as we're doing now. We're seeing it bend again, and we need it to go down further. The vaccines are coming, they're around the corner, but this is going to be a long process. It may be into the fall, before we're looking at everyone getting vaccinated. And so making sure that we keep staying focused, that we keep being kind and taking care of each other, and don't forget where we are in this process. And absolutely, I'm going to try and look up the address right now to where the virtual mental health services are available, and try and type it in right now.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for all of those answers in that formal portion of the Q&A. I really appreciate the openness and the honesty with which each of you has sort of dealt with a range of really troubling and difficult topics and issues. What I'd like to do now is move to the audience questions. So Bruce, I know you're sitting in the background. If we can shift to the Slido questions. These are all questions now that have come from the audience in the virtual room. And what we're going to see, the top 3 questions that are appearing on the page at any given time are the ones that have had the most upvotes from other audience members. So we'll do our best to work through a number of these over the next 25 minutes or so. But let's start with this one that's right here at the top. Are any of you aware if there are any plans to build a post-secondary institution in Maple Ridge? Is there anybody who's prepared to speak to that one? Bob?
Sure, if you'd like. So right now, obviously, education is going to play a key and pivotal role moving forward in recovery, because we're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to train a number of different people, including healthcare. We're seeing the need, because of the need for healthcare, we're needing to train more healthcare professionals. And so I know during the campaign, there was the announcement of a new Surrey Medical School, which is great. As far as, and we need to do much more of that, obviously, and skills training and all of that. Now, Maple Ridge. So before, in the last term, this is our new term, Minister Bear and I had pulled a panel together of city and the school district and First Nations and a number to talk about this very issue. And because one of the problems we have in Maple Ridge is we have a very high graduation rate, but we actually have a lower than average post-secondary rate. And so part of that is it's tough. I have 5 kids, and one's going to Fraser Valley, the other one went to BCIT, one went to BCC, and it's tough. They've got to go out and drive to various places or take transit. My middle son tried to take a bus to BCIT. It took him 2 hours the first day. said, no, I can't do that. So the point is yes, there's still talk about looking at some form of post-secondary in Maple Ridge. I personally think it would be wonderful because proximity is important. When people go to school in an area, they stay in the area, which is really an important thing I learned from being on the finance committee all over the province. So the short answer is there's a lot of work that would have to be done to do this, but from the planning group that we had over the last couple of years, there's certainly a will amongst community leaders to continue to look at this. And Lisa, did you want to jump in there? Were you putting your hand up to? Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. No, so we did bring this to the minister who was looking at it. This is something, the specific request was, for feasibility study, really to assess what the need is here, because post-secondary can mean anything. And I did a pitch last year, and I'm going to do a pitch this year as well, that I believe the school board should be on this panel, that we should have a representative from the school board, because, the theme always is innovation. It's a little bit different this year with the COVID, but, it's always innovation and what we can do, in Maple Ridge. And so the school board is part of that. The amount of amazing innovative programs that we have going on out of SD42 is just absolutely mind-blowing. We are so lucky to have such an amazing set of programs and representatives here in Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows. But post-secondary can look like trades. It can look like skills training. It can look like bricks and mortar. It can look like using existing spaces. So what we need is a true assessment of what the exact gap is, what would be, what our students, most importantly, it should always be the students, driving it, what they actually want and need. And then what partners could we work with to do that? You've got Douglas College, who's kind of turf we're in. You've got Kwantlen Polytechnic, who already has some trades in our schools. There's a number of opportunities. And so that's what this next step is looking at, what we can possibly do with post-secondary here in Maple Ridge. And all of us on the Zoom today are part of that table. We are all, along with the school district and both First Nations, and we'll continue as a group to advocate for this and to look at ways that we can advance the post-secondary conversation. So I hope that answers the question.
Excellent, thank you. Another interesting one here that I might steer in the mayor's direction. The public library provides a unique space for all kinds of services in the community. How could they potentially be playing a role in the COVID recovery?
Brock, that's a great question. And I'm going to be honest with you, I actually don't have the answer for you. I do have one of my counselors is the rep, Counselor Ryan Svensson, and I'm going to check with him to find out what is the state of the nation there. But they will have gone through the same processes. I do believe that they opened up at the exact same time cycles, so I know where they were in the process with us. Most of us were all in alignment with provincial health directions from Dr. Henry. What opportunities there might exist and how they're faring is actually a group that I confess I don't have an update for you, so I'm going to get one. And another note to self right here, and a lot of post-it notes, and we carry on, and we'll do that. But there's a great location for further learnings and going back to traditional roots of using books as well as connecting with the internet. So, very important resource. They were opened up at the same time as we, when we opened our city back up, and generally the economy went back up into, first year back to work. I'm going to be checking up on them, and I'll let you know.
It's an interesting one because communities all across the country have libraries, and
Absolutely.
it'd be interesting just to see what has been tried or experimented with in other places that we might be able to kind of beg, borrow, or steal in terms of bringing it to Maple Ridge for new ideas. So yeah, obviously a good question underlying it, but one we haven't had the chance to think about yet. So
and it may be Brock, if somebody that's in the audience might have that response for us. They might well know.
it's about resourcing the answer sometimes. And so we're going to reach out for a lifeline now to our audience participation and see if they've got the answer for us. But to my knowledge, they're running in the same way, but I would imagine that they've gone through the same challenges, that you've got to go through a WorkSafe program and you've got to put together a suitable way to be able to open up and facilitate. But I mean, they've got a lot of hardcover materials here. So I know some of the things that our planning department had to do to facilitate the receipt of plans, which of course, there's measures of safety protocols that they had to go through in order to deal with all this. So yeah, good question, great question. Maybe the answer's out there, but I'm gonna find out.
A couple of questions here that have more of an environmental focus again. We did talk earlier about the notion of sustainability as part of recovery. I think these questions are pushing us back to a more sort of green interpretation of that. One of the questions relates to greenhouse gas emissions particularly. And it's not so much about the emissions themselves, but how do we take the lessons of multiple levels of government working together in the midst of the pandemic and apply those to some of those other big challenges we have, like climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions to the levels we seek by 2050? Are there things that we can sort of carry away from our current context that will help us moving forward on big challenges like that?
Well, I'll step in there, I guess. So, I would just say that we've seen some real positive movement as far as greenhouse gases, pollution in our country. How many of us remember air care stations? What we've seen is, they're no longer, as we know. The technology that we have seen that have been implemented inside of vehicles has dramatically changed the amount of levels of pollution, so that you can go downtown and it's almost like fresh air. I remember when I first moved to the passed through the Lower Mainland in '68, and I asked my dad, "What's that green cloud?" That's smog. So, I think that focus on technology is a big thing. Canada is a world leader. I think that we have some natural resources, natural gas that is really beneficial for the world, actually. In greenhouse gas emissions, we don't get the credits because it's where it's going to be exported to China and other places like that. But it does, we are one system. So again, I want to focus on the technology. I would say also that even, we are a resource. I mean, we have, our economy is quite broad, but the resource sector for British Columbia, for Canada, is really important. We can't just say, "Well, that's bad." How can we do it in a better way? And I know that, for example, we're going to net zero emissions and all that. Even companies, the big bad Syncrude, they're the oil industry, oil and gas industry is 10% of our economy. So we can't just say, "Oh, let's just forget that." That's so many hundreds of thousands of jobs. And yes, and when we have produce the cleanest fossil fuels in the world. So it is we need to do it, but in a smarter way, and have that goal as far as a net zero. And I think that we're going in the right direction. We've come a long ways, and I think we need to continue. And also put a plug in for hydroelectricity. That is a clean energy. So there's a lot of good things we're doing, and we just need to keep on going.
Thanks, Mark. And maybe, Bob, I'll go to you next, but picking up on that notion of how do we do this smarter? What are we learning from where we are today about how we get to where we need to be?
Well, I think, like many things, it's about putting an environmental lens on projects. Like, for example, I know that with our government, when we do a public project, we want to be able to put that lens on it and say, "Hey, look, how can we build a building that is greener?" Like mass timber, for example, which is very helpful. But the other thing is setting policy that encourages other levels of government to do the right thing. And our Climate Change Accountability Act and our Clean BC plan is the most ambitious plan for carbon reductions in North America. So I think one way that you can work forward is to put the lens on everything that you do in every ministry, but also, you know, walk the walk and say, look, we've set these targets, and there's a legally required accountability to reduce targets. And the way you get at that is things like, you know, the carbon tax, but we've actually increased carbon price rebates for low income families so that, you know, we can have that balance so that we're environmentally conscious, but also thinking about affordability, which is important. Rebates for electric vehicles, home efficiency upgrades, but also, and this is touching on something that Mark was talking about, is how do we make our industry more efficient? Because, you know, obviously a lot of environmental issues are driven by consumers and individuals, but also by industry. So I think it's important to encourage all levels of government to make sure that we support those initiatives that electrify industry, for example, in British Columbia. And so we put $105 million just this year for incentives for industry to move to cleaner operations. And then over the next 3 years is $106 million for schools and hospitals and universities to reduce their consumption. So it's about finding those incentives, but absolutely, I hope that right now, this week, John Horgan was meeting with the other premiers, with the Prime Minister about a number of issues. One of them was healthcare transfers, but there's been this constant dialogue between all levels of government. I hope that continues. I truly do, because for us to be able to get to these goals, we're going to have to perhaps continue that level of dialogue, because it's unprecedented. I mean, when John actually went out and said, look, you got to shut the borders down. And so, you know, a lot of pressure was put on, because if you remember, the borders, you know, on the other side of the border, Washington State was like the epicenter at the time, early on. And so that sort of communication was able to push the federal government into the right direction. So I'm hoping that, you know, you show leadership by doing. And so I think that's what we're doing in British Columbia. I hope the feds will take advantage of that. And I know that coming down to the municipalities, if we support those things, that we'll get more action on that. So that's my long, short answer. Lisa can't kick me under the table because she's too far away.
Thank you, Bob. And maybe I'll turn it to Mike very quickly on this one as well, because I know the city is doing so much on the sustainability front. How do you think we learn from where we are now about how we move all of that forward?
Well, it kind of chimed in on exactly where we are. We had a plan and we're going there already. We approved reduction of GHGs, and you know, we're focused very much on that balance between the three pillars on how to build sustainable communities. So I'm going to leave my comments down there, but what I'm going to do is give you a library update. They were actually very fast through the gate. People feel very safe. Their numbers are back up to complete running operations. They have a complete protocol in place for managing their hard copy, and their online access to materials is through the roof. So I would say that that's a fairly fast piece of resourceful work to get you that information, Matt. Kudos to Councillor Ryan Svensson, who's our library rep, who I just pinged and got that information back. So, you know, that's what we do. We're here. I'm only one of a 7-member council, and you know what, we work together because we got it, because there's a lot of things to get done, and no greater call to duty than a pandemic.
Excellent. Let me change gears once more. And one of the questions that's come up in a couple of ways on the Slido is really relating to the mental health challenges again. You know, I think people are curious about the kinds of resources that are out there and available. Some comments in the chat about how great the Bounce Back program is, Lisa. So thank you for sharing the link specifically on that. But some concerns specifically around teens and young adults, and what kinds of resources may be available to support them as they sort of struggle with the loss of social opportunities, the change in educational style, the decline in job opportunities potentially. There's a lot that's on the shoulder of, you know, the 16, 17, 18-year-old that's trying to figure out how to move out into the world. Any thoughts or suggestions for them? Maybe, Lisa, maybe can I start with you on that?
Absolutely. So I'm really glad the bounceback.ca, we were able to put it into the chat, because you know, that is such a huge investment, and there is a large team focus on that. making sure teens have a site that they can go to virtually if they're not comfortable going in person, and if they're not willing to share with others. Another great service we have in Maple Ridge is, of course, the Foundry. This is a fantastic initiative. So much community support, so much collaboration between levels of government and community leaders and donors to make it happen. But so proud that our province chose Maple Ridge as that site, as a community needing that kind of support. And so we have the Foundry services available for anyone who doesn't know where it is. It's, of course, where the old Frogstone Grill is, across from Thomas Haney on Lougheed. We also have coming into the schools here in School District 42, the first Children and Youth Integrated Teams, which is a pilot project, and we were the first school announced and invested when Minister Darcy was still the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction. She wanted to do this program, and Bob and I were very clear that the makeup of our community would allow Maple Ridge to be and School District 42 to be such a fantastic place for a pilot program. We have a school district who is absolutely committed to social and emotional learning, is doing great work and already embedding that into their schools. So bringing in this project, pilot project, we're able to support children and youth right where they are, and more importantly as well, their families as well. Provide them access to those resources, those services, that counseling that they need, and it's team-based care. So children and their families only have to tell and share their stories once. They don't have to go from doctor to doctor or clinic to clinic and retell and re-traumatize our youth who are trying their best to move forward. So putting those resources directly in the schools, directly in the community to support our children, to support our teens and support their families is the kind of work we all need to keep doing. And so those are just some of the services available. Always happy if anyone has more questions. This is such an important topic. My office, Bob's office, always open to connect you with where you need to go. And there's lots of tools we can point you to.
Brock, if I can just interject here just briefly, just that I'll be putting for the Canada Summer Jobs is going to be out again in people can apply, businesses, charitable organizations, nonprofits can apply for that. That'll be coming out probably in February. And I think it's just good for youth to be, well, obviously working or volunteering, and so to be out there. I think it's good for the mental health and also for skills development. And so I know I saw Carolyn DeVries put a comment also about Work BC, and that's provincial. So I think going there as far as getting more training. And I think that there's just a place for volunteering. Look, what I know it's more difficult right now, but even for example, Salvation Army for bell ringing. I saw a video that was showing a couple of teens that were out ringing the bells and dancing. Okay, and I think it's good for for others, and it's good for themselves. That volunteering or that working, getting out there. So.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Carolyn, for some great resources and comments in the chat box as well. On this important question. We're starting to run low on time. I have one quick one maybe to put, I think, to the mayor with his economic development hat on. The question there about whether there are opportunities to attract more hotels to the community.
We have two hotels in our town right now. Actually, I had a meeting with the Art Infinity Hotel this last week. Decided that it was time to reach out and connect with them to ensure that they're supported. Want to facilitate tourism, and they've got some big aspirational goals. They've certainly had some struggles, so I wanted to connect them with some resources, show them where they can go and find programs that can help them support their employees as well as themselves, because there's a lot of business loans that are available right now. some considerably great deals actually for business. And so we have 2 hotels in town. Do I think there's opportunity for more? Absolutely. This is going to take some steps to get there, but those hotels used to be full and we were ready to take more, and we'll be there again. So they need to be facilitated. I was talking to them about actually going into hotel room tax and getting and creating a level playing field, which we're doing right now with Airbnb. We're going to start regulating that, make sure everybody's not, those that invest in bricks and mortar don't have, get out competed, in people's basements. So, there's a lot of that going on. So we'd like to ensure that they all fall under the same playing field, no different than taxi cab operators when they compete with, let's just say the Uber and Lyfts of this world, right? It has to be a fair marketplace for them to be able to operate in. And so it's our job to provide, I believe, to provide a fair environment for that, but also to reach out and just support them. It's not looking very busy over there. And just wanted to reach out and have a conversation with them, and did that. And I'll be doing that also with the Best Western. And those are important things here. If we're going to leave our tourism, that they're available, that they're well looked after. And on the good news is that the owner of the Art Infinity just applied for a license to open the restaurant again. So it's been a while since that pantry's been open, and looking forward to that. And it was just to reach out. That's my job. I consider myself to be the head salesperson of the city in some ways, and that's in my blood. So I reach out and talk to people and see what their needs are and what we can do to help them. So yes, the answer is yes, and yes and more. And I know that I've got some helpers readily willing, available to pitch in and do their part. And with that, staff produced me a great bumper package there to talk about all the provincial supports, all the tourism supports that we can deliver, what the room tax looks like, and the community safety perspective that we needed to bring to the table as well. So they have some resources around that to deal with actually those people that are struggling. So it's a full package, and that's my job, is to make sure that they're armed with all the information they possibly need to be successful in their business.
Excellent, thank you. And I know we've had some discussion in the chat room and elsewhere around the sort of the arts and culture sector. Hasn't come explicitly in a question, but Bob, maybe I'll throw that to you as the sort of the last portion of the Q&A here. Any thoughts on what we need to be thinking about in the arts and culture space?
Well, I really appreciate the question. I did notice that Curtis Pendleton, who was thanking some of the panelists for bringing up arts and culture, and it would be absolutely remiss of me not to bring that up, seeing as I'm now the parliamentary secretary for arts and film, and I just thought it would be nice for the community to know that I was given that portfolio and what had happened. And I think it's important in the COVID context to look at arts and culture, just because it's really tough. You look at one of the sectors that was hit the most. You were already dealing with many people living on the poverty line who work in the arts, and now they can't do anything. And a lot of them work in the gig economy in restaurants, and then they couldn't work in that either. And so they had some real challenges. So I'm really proud of the work I was able to do with Minister Bear when she was Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture. And now with Minister Mark, I'm able to keep going on that and work on the recovery piece. And I think that's something that Premier Horgan has done, I think, really well, as he's looked at people's strengths. I come from arts and culture and the creative industries, and he's looked at everyone's skill set and he's put them into positions where they can help in the recovery. So I really appreciate the time, Brock, to be able to say that, because the whole meeting went by and I wasn't able to say how much I support arts and culture and in our community and around the province. So thanks for that opportunity.
Well, thank you, Bob. And it's one of those things, I've subjected you to 90 minutes of questions and we didn't get anywhere near some of the topics that I know are really important to each of you. So let me start our wrap up then by thanking each of you for what we did get to and the amount of time and input that you've shared with us over the course of the last 2.5 hours. Member of Parliament for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, Mark Dalton, the Honourable Lisa Bear, the Provincial Minister of Citizen Services and the MLA for Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, Bob Deeth, the MLA for Maple Ridge Mission, and Mayor Mike Morden of the City of Maple Ridge. We really appreciate the time that each of you have taken to do this and the information and insight that you've shared. It's been really interesting to kind of listen to all of the ways that you're engaged with these important issues and the ways that you're making very valuable contributions. So thank you for the time that you've spent doing that. I also want to thank some of the city staff who have been working behind the scenes to put the Community Leaders Forum together and to make sure that it runs smoothly this evening, in particular the economic development staff, including Bruce Livingston and Wendy Dupley. Thanks to them for all of the work in getting this organized. And finally, I want to say thank you to the audience. There are a large number of you there who have taken the time to spend your evening listening to and asking questions about and considering these very important issues. And that's what we need to put the community back on the road to recovery and to think about the kind of economy we want to build next. So your participation, your attendance, your insights are all really appreciated. And best of luck as we all start to move forward in this next phase of where the virus takes us. And we begin to think about that light at the end of the tunnel, the coronavirus, and where we can accelerate our community to next. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Thanks, Brock.
Thank you. Thank you, Brock. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody for participating. It's just awesome.